So we have the luxury of inviting somebody who is part of driving that innovation. She's been an executive in the TV industry. She's the managing director for Google's partnerships in Asia. She leads women in Google, the Asia chapter, and she's extremely passionate about innovation. She just flew in. Michelle Guthrie, please come up here. Welcome to Sweden.
You forgot to mention I'm a director on MTG as well. Christina invited me onto the Metro board some years ago, and then I moved across to the MTG board. So MTG is very near and dear to my heart, and this is probably my now kind of 15th time in Stockholm. It's very
really?
nice.
So you're getting used to the jet lag. You don't look tired at all.
Exactly.
So I would sort of dig into the innovation powerhouse that is Google. What drives this innovation?
I guess, at least I've been at Google 3.5 years, so much less time than Ricard. But the one thing that really sort of struck me when I joined Google was the innovation was very much driven from the top by Larry Page. And the way in which he really thinks about changing the world is extraordinary, but it drives it through the company. So there's a couple of things that Larry, we sort of talk within the company of well, this is what Larry says, and one of the things that really struck me in the beginning was I thought search seemed to be done, right? Search is pretty good, it's really fast. When I joined 3.5 years ago, I thought it comes back in milliseconds, right? And there was a question asked at one Q&A session with Larry where there was a question from somebody in the company who asked him exactly that. Don't you think we're done? And he said, I think we're only at 1% of what's possible. And everyone looked like, what? And the way he had sort of 2 points, which I think gives you a sense of the way we think about innovation within Google. One is that he said, why is it that we need to type? Why it takes so long to type? Well, everyone sort of is typing into Google all the time. That takes a long time. So shouldn't we be predictive about that? Which is why you have autocomplete, right? And so when you type in W, it automatically sends you the weather site. So if you type slowly, as many people do, if you type W, it actually doesn't just autocomplete by sending you the link. It actually takes you straight to the first site that is the most popular with W in it. So if you put in W, it comes up weather. If you put in WA, it comes up Walmart, right? And that means that every time you type in a letter, it's actually sending it back to Google and sending you back a search. So it's searching every letter, not searching your entire string anymore, which is kind of insane, right? And then you look at knowledge search, right? And the question was, well, why is it that when you say, how old is Barack Obama? And then if you said, how old is his wife, it can't figure that out, that the last question you asked was about Barack Obama and his wife is Michelle. Well, then we started doing knowledge graphs, which actually have relationships between Barack Obama and his wife. And so the first question you could ask is what's the weather in Stockholm? And then the next question is, what about tomorrow? Well, it'll give you the weather in Stockholm. You don't have to type weather in Stockholm tomorrow.
But your ultimate goal is to actually do mind reading and just give searches.
Well, that was the other thing that came up. It was this sense. Again, search is our most well-known product, the one that's the most advanced. And as I said, the way that we think about innovation is still doing a 10x change in terms of the way we look at search. So the question then came, why do you have to search at all? Why shouldn't we just know, right? And then I thought, is that? But that's what happened with Google Now. So Google Now is an application, certainly on my Android, which which pulls in all the information, including from my calendar, from my Gmail. And so it'll send me a message or ping me saying, leave now for the airport, you're late, or there's a lot of traffic. Or so it will essentially be your digital assistant, rather than having to search to say, what time, you know, when is my flight delayed, number one, is the traffic bad going to the airport. It pulls it all together and gives you a useful message rather than actually requiring you to do 5 searches. So,
when you're saying 10x, I don't know if everybody got that, but 10x, it's the idea needs to be 10 times better than the last one, not just now with lemon taste. It's something completely different, and that's something something that drives innovation a lot in Google.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that the way we think about it is not around incremental improvements. I mean, obviously we have to make incremental improvements to products as we go along. But what is really going to drive change is those 10x ideas, or the moonshots, those things that are so fundamentally different, that exponential, right? I mean, everyone knows that if you sort of go in linear 30 times, you get to 30, and you go linear 30 times, you get to a billion, right? And so how do you actually change the game, and how do you make something much more than incremental improvements? Because I think the view is that, in the same way that Christina talked about, ultimately, if she did nothing, these companies would die. It's the same thing, that ultimately, if we did nothing on search, or if we did nothing around mobile, or if we did nothing around Chrome or YouTube, those products, there would be, particularly on the technology side, someone will come with something 10x better. So we need to be 10x better.
But how do you recruit those someones? If you look at recruitment in Google, is that that must be part of the secret?
Yeah, I think we obviously spend a lot of time on recruitment. I sit on the Asia hiring committee. We spend a lot of time around it as an executive team. Actually, one of my early attempted hires at Google got rejected because he was regarded as too boring, and it gave me a very good message about what we're looking for. What we're looking for are people who are passionate, people who actually have a life outside of their work as well. One of the recent guys I hired in my Hong Kong team is the amateur wakeboarding champion in Hong Kong. It has nothing to do with whether he's good in the office, but he's passionate about something. You can see that he drove himself to do something kind of extraordinary.
And have you found sort of an innovation methodology? A lot of people speak about the 20%. I don't know if you've heard that, but 20% of the time can be spent on playing around with whatever project you want to play around with, as long as you give it to the sort of investment committee or the innovations committee. Is that more of a branding thing, or do you actually do it, and how does it work?
No, we do. I mean, definitely on the engineering side, we've seen incredible innovation come out of those 20% projects. And what we are trying to do, though, is put more wood behind fewer arrows, right? So this sense of really, instead of trying to do 1,000 different projects, but really trying to make a demonstrable change around a few very big areas. And I mean, a sort of a fantastic example, and this shows you the way in which we kind of empower our teams. There was, I used to be in charge of our Maps partnerships, and one of the things that happened was we launched something called the Google Art Project, which was essentially indoor maps of galleries. So you know, in the same way that we had a Street View car doing outdoor maps, we had a kind of a version of a Street View car inside galleries, doing incredible imagery inside galleries, and then doing incredible sort of digital images of the main paintings or main sculptures in particular galleries. And I know that.
So if you're 15 and sitting in Chennai in India, you can be at Louvre, and then you can go to
exactly. And the way it came about was one of the engineers in the Maps team thought it would be really. I mean, he grew up in India, and he said it would have been really cool, and he was very interested in art. It'd be really cool if I could have visited the Louvre or visited the Tate Modern when I was in India, and I should it'd be great if a 15-year-old now could do that. Well, we've done it, right? And that came from a 20% project.
But that culture of sort of empowering lunatics or enthusiasts or whatever they are, that must be something that sort of creates a lot of innovation, but it's also quite difficult to harvest that, because when you open the door and say, give me your ideas, you need to manage them somehow. And I sort of, how do you do that?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, on something like a 20% project, what normally happens is you don't work on these projects alone. So it has to be compelling enough that you've got to involve other colleagues in it. And so if all these ideas are sort of bubbling up and you have choices between all these different 20% projects, you're going to choose the best and most interesting and the most impactful. So there is this sense of, if you're working on the biggest stuff, it's going to attract the most talent to those projects. So it is almost kind of self-fulfilling. I do think that there is a lot of there's a lot of kind of launch and iterate culture at Google. We try
launch and iterate.
Yeah.
Launch
So
what's your attitude towards failure then?
I mean, so my other favorite Larry quote is when we've tried to do something totally crazy, it's always kind of, there's generally nothing bad that's turned out from it, right? Either we've learned that we shouldn't do that again, right? So that's also learning, right? But it is this sense of, you learn from failure, you learn from trying things. Probably sort of most of you are in a 1% trial on any one of our Google products, because we run these trials to just see what happens.
So at any time when I Google, I could actually be part of a trial.
You could be.
Yeah.
You could be. So we run a lot of trials around, let's see what happens if we change the order, or what happens if we change the color, what happens if we sort of actually change the user interface. So I mean, even when I joined, I remember I went on to our maps interface, and the other thing that Google does is it has a real sense of the employees trying every product. So we call it dog fooding. You try
dog fooding.
Dog fooding. Okay. You have to eat your own dog food, right? And so we have a dog and so some of it's voluntary, some of it's not. So sometimes we all get put into a trial without much asking, and other times they'll ask for volunteers for particular trials. But I remember being on our maps site, and I went, "What's going on here?" It was all sort of wacky. I was trying to print something and it didn't work, and then I saw in sort of very small print, "This is an experimental version." I went, "I want the old one." But that's I mean, and there's a place for you to put feedback, right? So I never saw that maps interface again. but we try things, and I think that the great thing about digital is the cost of trying things is almost zero, right? When you think about it, what happens if you try something, it doesn't work? You try it again, right? It's not as if you've got this kind of massive manufacturing plant where it takes you so long to get to the consumer, but by the time you've made a car, you've sort of figured out it doesn't sell. In digital, you can try things and get immediate feedback.
But that's very interesting, because everybody understands this and everybody says that, but very few large companies does it in a good way. And you are actually doing it. So I think that's one of your key strengths. The areas you choose as well, what are the most interesting areas? If you look at innovation, what's sort of like, wow, this is where it's happening?
I think that a lot of the innovation we're sort of looking at is really trying to transform areas where technology has never been before. So whether that is in your house, right? We recently bought a thermostat company, and it does a beautiful sort of it's a beautiful device. Well, I think when you think about sort of how much technology is really in your home, not very much, right? How much technology is really in your kitchen? Not very much. The refrigerator, give or take the ice machine, is probably the same as it's always been. Same with the car industry, right? The car's a car, when you and the way that Google X was kind of thinking about the self-driving car is they looked at the problem in a totally different way. They looked at it as, tell me why exactly cars are only used 5% of the time. 95% of the time, they're stationary. And that requires a whole lot of infrastructure around parking, a whole lot of infrastructure and a whole lot of wastage. So is there a different model of a car? Frankly, people are really bad drivers, right? They're unpredictable, less predictable than
76% of all Swedish men claim they're better than average. It tells you something about the math also.
Exactly.
But sort of apart from areas where there's no technology right now, what existing technologies are you focusing on?
Mobile. I think that when we look at the next 5 billion people, I mean, you talked about sort of, it's about 2.8 billion that are connected to the internet. The next 5 billion are not going to sit in front of a desktop with a fiber coming in the back. It's just not going to happen, right? So when I look at Indonesia, for example, with 250, 260 million people, they're not going to be digging up the roads and laying fibre. And that doesn't mean that people aren't going to be connected to the net. They're going to be connected through this or a tablet or something, or some other device, but it's going to be mobile. So when you think about what that means for interfaces, what that means for products, user experiences, connections between online and offline. I mean, even in developed markets, we're finding that up to half of our searches are coming on mobile now, and they're just different types of searches. So we're spending a lot of time really understanding that user behaviour, thinking about products and ways in which we can really connect consumers with advertisers, with kind of content that they're interested in. I mean, one of my first trips to Indonesia a few years ago, as part of Google, I went to see one of the telcos, and they complained about the fact that half of their bandwidth was being used on YouTube. And I said, YouTube, we don't have a YouTube Indonesia. So the content wasn't Indonesia, and it wasn't relevant, and still people were going to it. So you saw a tremendous, now we do have YouTube Indonesia, but you see just tremendous adoption of video and maps and social and everything else all on this.
What do you see, how you reinvented advertising as we knew it, with the clicks and the sort of performance-based model. Where do you see advertising going in the future?
I guess, I mean, we see sort of a number of trends. One is obviously around personalization. So I like the fact that if I search for something, I like the fact that the phone knows where I am, right? Because if I now search for a restaurant, the fact that it knows I'm in Stockholm rather than in Singapore is a good thing, so that it can give me directions. Well, when I go to the store, I go to the restaurant, it'd be great to be able to get a 5% discount if I showed that I used Google or the maps to get me there. So we're thinking about connecting online to offline. We're really thinking about much more personalization and actually just making products that are fundamentally more useful to people. Because, I mean, this is an incredible device, but it has to be useful, right?
But so if you were in your old industry, the TV industry, and you kind of are because you're part of the MTGX team of sorts, but what would you be worried or excited about this development? If you're a traditional TV broadcaster, is this a threat or an opportunity?
I think that content is, and sort of fantastic programming is going to find an audience wherever they are. I think the key thing is being able to reach that audience, know who that audience is, and really connect with them. So I look at my kids, and I'm not so sure that they will ever watch broadcast. They're 12 and 17. I'm not so sure they'll ever watch broadcast television as in the kind of linear world, but they watch more video programming than has ever been known to mankind. So it's a bit of YouTube, and it's quite a lot of links that other people sort of send them, and then a whole lot of stuff off iTunes and God knows where it comes from. And so they actually see a lot. It's just a question of making sure that if you're MTG and you have this amazing content, you can really distribute it. I mean, the key thing is really taking advantage of the fact that now there's no geographical borders, right? So if I have made great content in Australia, and we have examples of this in YouTube, where this guy runs a barbecue channel in Australia. He has more viewers in the US than he has in Australia. Now, under the traditional TV model, that wouldn't work, right? The idea that this video, this backyard barbecue guy would be able to get a TV show in the US is impossible, right? But he has viewers, and he's making money in the US, and not leaving his backyard. So it's a tremendous opportunity.
So it's a tremendous opportunity for the TV industry, and I see that whoever figures out how to connect the data to the storytelling and emotions that the TV experience can create, they will be the winners. Who that is remains to be seen, but I think that's the position I think everybody would be interested in having. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I guess we very much see ourselves at Google as platform builders, right? So Android is an amazing platform for games and other content to be made available on Google Play to then be able to either make money from advertising, in-app purchase, pay per download, whatever that is. But in terms of having the platform as somewhere where content owners or producers can use, that's fantastic. The same thing with YouTube. So it's very much a platform, a global platform at scale. And how do you take advantage of that if you're the barbecue guy in Australia to be able to upload it and monetize that content globally?
On Monday morning, you wake up utterly confused because now you are in a basement and you're the CEO of a young startup. What would you bring with? What would you bring with you from your experience at Google?
I guess my overarching sort of my one word I'd leave with you is be fearless. What's the worst that could happen to you? If you don't try, you don't get, right? And so I do think, and this is a message I give to a lot of women in particular, is don't be afraid of failure. That every one of you is very, very employable. If your business idea doesn't work out and you keep going, you know that your fallback position is great. So be fearless. I think just say yes to things and try really,
and you
really
use
hard.
that when you're making decisions yourself. What's the worst thing that can happen?
Exactly. I mean, I must admit, I do sort of and I think it helps actually when you've got kids, where you realise that if anything happened to my daughters, I'd drop work tomorrow, right? I mean, if they really needed me, and most of the time I'm not around for them very much, but I know that if something, God forbid something happened, I know that I'd be gone. But it means that when I'm at Google, I absolutely want to do the best thing, right? And I want to be fearless because that's why I'm here, right? That's why I'm at Google. I want to have a global impact. I want to try and figure out how do we bring amazing services to 260 million people in Indonesia and 1.1 billion in India and 1.3 billion in China. I mean, it's a massive, massive opportunity. But again, what's the worst that can happen? It doesn't work out. You try again, right? I'm not going to send Google bankrupt no matter what I do. and even if they fire me, I think I'll find a job, Christina. But I do. I mean, I do think that most people are sort of much more afraid of failure than they need to be, right? I mean, it's
and also what I've seen as the fear of failure is much more terrifying than actually failing.
Yes.
Monday after that, you wake up and you're the queen of Sweden, and Sweden is no longer a democracy. You can decide whatever you want to decide, but you became elected queen because you said entrepreneurship, technology, and more women. Okay. What would you do then?
Well, I love Sweden. I've got to say, I a couple of years ago.
All the queens say that.
I know, no, exactly. so I mean, I think that when I look at the difference between somewhere like Sweden and Silicon Valley, I think Sweden's more beautiful, right? I mean, I actually find Silicon Valley quite suburban. So I think you have a tremendous opportunity to be a place where people really want to live and feed off each other, right? I mean, really, you want to create an ecosystem where there's a lot of people around that can support each other. And so I think this combination of being an incredible place to live as well as being surrounded by really, really bright, passionate people is the key for things, right? And it's that Steve Jobs passionate and talented people, but I think it's also a beautiful environment. I mean, one of the real challenges with a number of cities in Asia is they're where the people are and where the opportunity is, but it's not someplace you want to live, right? So I think increasingly global talent is incredibly mobile, right? So a startup in Stockholm could move anywhere, right? So you have to create an environment where people want to be in that place because they can move anywhere. And
but I won't let you off the hook completely on the women part of the question.
The women part. Yes.
And you run the Google Asia Women Chapter.
Yes.
What are some of the things that you're doing to sort of harvest the talent that are sort of locked in a lot of heads that are not in Google?
I think it's a very kind of complicated process in the sense that it isn't just a magic fix. It's not this sense of okay, I'll do one thing and now we have 50-50, right? I think that particularly around engineering talent and making sure that we have enough kind of potential female engineers in the pipeline, it really starts with my 12-year-olds or even earlier, right? One of the real concerns I have is that not enough girls do maths and science, and guess what? If they don't do maths and science, they're not going to be an engineer. So we do a lot of work at Women at Google to really reach out to 12-year-olds to make maths and science fun. We do something in our Tokyo office, for example, where we bring in high school girls and have them spend sort of 3 or 4 hours with us and just kind of play with the products. We do some presentations, but just actually make technology fun. I mean, one of my problems is actually just the word engineer. You ask my daughters if they want to be engineers, they just look at me like, why would I want to be an engineer, right?
No, we should find another word, like creator or something like that.
Exactly. So if you say, do you want to play on computers and make cool stuff? Yes, I'll do that, right? And so like, how do we kind of redefine what kind of working in technology really is, and how do we make it just more fun and much more sort of useful? And as I said, one of the things that we're trying to do is really sort of start at high schools and go all the way through.
I think another way to do is to make sure that a lot more people like you lead companies like Google and others. I think it's fantastic to listen to you. And a big round of applause for Michelle. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So, what I would like you to do now is to just close your eyes and think, have you ever had an idea that you've never done? An idea that you thought somebody should... And if you haven't had an idea like that, what is something that you would want to create? Just think about that for a minute. Okay, please turn around to the other person next to you and share that idea.